Hi, I am Ellie from Sawdust and Stitches, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time joining. Today we are in the process of doing the 12 Days of Christmas. Today is day 4, and today's sew is going to be the Amber Angular Wallet by MaryBeth made it. It is a really easy raw edge project, cork, vinyl, leather, all good for the project. Quick sew, easy to follow directions in the pattern. MaryBeth is fantastic, one of the best people business-wise I know, and she's just a sweet lady. I'm going to link the pattern below. A lot of times too, she has on her website listed laser cut kits for the Amber wallet, so you don't even have to cut anything out, and she's really quick sending stuff off. So if you don't see it, reach out to her, she will respond. But thank you for joining me. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and you'll get notified when I make more content. It also helps me. All right, let's get started. The pieces that we need an interior, we need an exterior, that's the one that has the zipper cut out. We need the zipper and the zipper tab. Let's see. So the inside, we need the inside piece. This is going to be for our card slots, and it's also going to make our pocket for our cash. This is the ID card slot we'll use for our ID window, and it's gonna be also in the interior. Sorry. For that ID window, I have a piece of clear. I've just taken, I got a set of stamps off Amazon, and I just pounded a hole through the center of the ID. That just helps you slide the ID card. That's optional. You don't have to do that. A piece of backing for that ID. There's the card slot pieces and the card slot fabric for building those card slots. I am using a very thin ripstop. All right, so I'm gonna start with that zipper. I know that may not be what the pattern says, but that's what I'm doing. Set those aside. All right, so I've already put double-sided tape down both sides of my zipper, and I'm just going to put my zipper pull on. Making sure it's even, pulling it through. I think, yep, that looks good. I think. No, it's not quite even. Let's try again. I just need to bring the right side down a notch. Zippers can be fiddly. If you look in the end, you can kind of see which one needs to be on top and how far on top it is. This zipper pull, by the way, is from Jeannie's Designs. There we go. I heard it click. That's better. Better. Okay, the zipper pull is from Jeannie's Designs. And it looks like that edge is a little bit fraying, so I'm just going to zap it really quick with the lighter. All right. And I've got my, let's see, I'm going to do 3/8 inch zipper guide. Perfect. I got that from Recent Relics on Etsy. And I want my zipper, as I have the wallet, I want my zipper opening to the left. So I'm going to have the rounded part of my zipper facing left. And then I am going to take the tape off one side. Take this and keep my zipper pull out of the tape, which is always my biggest challenge. Glue and tape for me, I'm like a kindergartner. All right, so I'm gonna take this and lay it, pull my pull through so I don't have to get that sticky anymore. And I'm gonna center it. I'm gonna put my little zipper guide in there. Just want to make sure it's centered on the back. I think it needs to come that way just a little bit. All right. That looks really centered. I like the way it looks. Making sure I have enough edge on both ends to catch that zipper in my seam, and I do. So I'm just going to take the tape off of the other end of my zipper, if it cooperates. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There we are. All right, let's see if it'll come off. Always when you're, when you're just sewing for you, this stuff comes off super easy. Just pops right off, not a problem. But when I'm doing something and recording it, it seems like it doesn't come off so easy. That's okay. I think we all have the same struggle. All right. So just going to turn it over, keeping that centered, and push it all down. Then I'm going to sew around that zipper box at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I do, just like MaryBeth, I do hand crank it a lot, like over the edges of the zipper, just because I think it gives it a smoother look. All right, and I am using just a generic black thread. So I'm just going to start at the top and pull my threads. So I'm going to leave long tails and stop in the same hole. And when I come back around, pull those threads. And I don't have a zipper foot on this, so we're just doing the best we can. Super picky about my boxing around the zipper. So I just want to use that hand crank, and then it doesn't tend to look as wonky. About another half a stitch. That looks good. All right. And while I have it here, I'm going to go ahead and pull this thread through so I don't forget and I don't sew over it and won't be able to. Just pulling that out of the way and keep going. I do have a narrow foot on here, I just don't have a zipper foot. All right, slide my zipper back, keep going. Get to that end, kind of hand crank it to make sure I don't go too far, because I do have a tendency to do that sometimes. And then hand crank again over that zipper. Sometimes it just makes for a more even stitch. I feel like it secures it better too. Making sure my zipper ends don't open too much. Sometimes they can do that. All right. And then across to where I started. And right there. All right. Perfect. All right, so now I'm gonna pull all those threads to the back. Sometimes it's a good idea to remember which one the last one was you sewed, because it can be hard to get that. All right, and I'm just going to take all these threads and tie them together. Then I will trim them and burn it. There is a lot of pulling threads through on this because that's my preference. I like to have, if at all possible, no threads back stitching. It just makes a more neat project. I'm gonna burn those edges a little bit. Tap them down. All right. So there is our zipper. All right, so we are gonna start with the card slot and the ID window piece. So I am going to put double-sided tape underneath all of these card slots except for the last one. And I am also going to put double-sided tape around the edge of my ID window. As I said, there is a lot of double-sided tape on this project, but it is worth it, and it keeps it together really nicely. I'm also going to put it around the front. I know I'll need it on my ID window background piece, which is that little black piece. That black is just water-resistant canvas or waterproof canvas. It's something I had laying around, so I thought, oh, it's perfect scrap, and it matches. Everything's black and gold. It's just a classic look, you know, black and gold. All right, and I did laser cut this on my laser. She does include SVGs for the pattern. All right, and then underneath these card slots, and then one also on the top. Tape's probably a little longer than it needs to be, but I'm just going quick. All right, and one up here on the top. And there you have it. And then double-sided tape on the front around the edges of my ID window. It took me a long time to figure out this ID window. I don't know why. It's so straightforward. I think I just couldn't, maybe I was just doing it tired the first time I did it, and I never processed it. But it's super simple. She makes it so simple. You know, sometimes we just have to complicate things. At least sometimes I do. All right. I did cut like a little corner out of my little waterproof canvas background just because it was easier for me. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna remove the double-sided tape for my ID window. I still have the paper backing on. I'm gonna take that off here in a minute. So taking the tape off the ID window. The ID window wants to come off the paper while I'm doing this. Well, I guess I can take that paper off. It's just a little harder to see. Maybe it's easier to see what I'm doing. Just taking that tape off. This is just a little weeding tool I got off Amazon. I think it came in a 3-pack. but for double-sided tape, sometimes you need something more. All right, so then I'm going to lay this card slot. Let's see, where are you? There you are. Gonna lay this around my card slot. Push it down. And then I am gonna sew around the edge of that card slot and also underneath this first, or I'm sorry, around the edge of the ID window. And then underneath the edge of this first slot. She does give you a tip for sewing these lines, to draw a line across in cork or in chalk. Let's see, the chalk will work. Yeah, that works. Just to give you a start and stop point, it does help. So your lines are even. All right, I can see it. I don't know if you can. Let's see. Can you see that? Just right here and right here. All right, so gonna sew around that ID slot and that bottom card slot. 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I am gonna pull my threads through because I would prefer that cleaner look. All right, here we go. And guys, there is no shame in using your turning wheel to make sure you're not going too far to get that straight. I do use it. That's why it's there. I feel like sometimes you just get a little bit more precision, and if you're picky like I am, it's good to have that option. And don't forget, you need to have that needle coming up like half of the way out of the material when you're turning corners, or it is going to, or could possibly, not necessarily going to, but could possibly skip a stitch. So instead of a square corner, you have a stitch that goes across it. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're doing this. Last couple of stitches I'm just going to do by hand, and then making sure that needle's coming back out so I get that square corner. And then across the bottom. One more stitch. There we go, coming back up. And then gonna finish it up and go in that same hole that I started in. At least that's the hope. Let's see. There we go. All right, leaving my tails long so that I can pull them through. Also, not letting go of it this time so I know which one I need to pull through. And I'm gonna pull it through. And tie them off. And you can do 2 separate knots. I'm just going to tie them together. We do a lot of knots, tying knots off on this piece. So whatever I can do to save time, that's really the longest part. Takes the longest for this whole wallet is building the card slots and tying. So if you don't mind back stitching and you can back stitch on that, then on your card slots, then it'll save you time. Granted, you may not want, I mean, it's not as clean of a look. That's just a preference though. All right, that's okay. All right, so I'm gonna trim all these threads and then I'm gonna singe them flat. My little lighter, kind of bending it so I keep the rest of the fabric away. I don't want to melt the plastic. All right, So that's kind of what we have so far. And now I'm going to sew a stitch right underneath that last card slot, the one closest to the ID window, and it's going to be underneath is between the ID window and the card slot. So sometimes it's hard to know. Let's see, putting my needle down in that line that I made, and then sewing straight across once again, leaving my tails long so that I can pull them through the back. One more stitch. All right, there we go. So pulling up my ends, tying them off. It's gonna hear that a lot. I might fast forward through this a little bit once I get a couple done. We'll see. We'll see how my editing skills are coming along. If I can do that, I will. If not, you guys are gonna go with me through every card slot, but you can always fast forward on your end too. That's always an option. Sometimes my thread gets a little short. I probably could have made it a little longer. There it is. One more knot and this one's done. Then we trim and singe. Trim those edges. And kind of fold that away and singe them. All right, perfect. So that's what we have so far. We've got our line there and around. Now we are going to take our card slot material. See, I'm gonna trim that fuzzy end off. And then I am going to remove the tape from the next card slot. Well, that went remarkably well. All right. And I am going to lay my card slot fabric materials. I'm going to lay it facing towards the top, so opposite direction of the ID, and I'm going to kind of center it between those the lines, keeping it straight. You want that straight. Then I'm going to take my ID window, or my backing for my ID pocket, and I'm going to remove that double-sided tape. I think I might have cut the wrong corner on that, but that's okay. We can fiddle with it once it's on. Whoops. Stick down. Be nice to me. Okay, perfect. So I am going to lay that right side down over that ID window. I want to leave like 1/8 of an inch about around the edges, because we don't care if it's in the seams, but we don't want to see it. And we're gonna secure that down with the tape. So we have that black background. I'm gonna take a card just to make sure it all fits, and it does. All right, whoops. It'll come out right when we sew it down. But all right, perfect. So that's gonna work. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it to the sewing machine, and I am gonna top stitch just under this card slot, starting and stopping with that little chalk line I made. And I think we need to gather this up and clip it because it's already in the way. Yeah, I think I got this ripstop stuff at a garage sale. It, maybe I shouldn't say that. But it was really cheap, and it is perfect for this because it is super thin, so it lays really flat. All right, gonna put my needle down in that hole, or on that line, lining everything up. There we go. Holding my strings, keeping them long, and then stitch across that card slot, stopping at that other little chalk line I made. Let's see, that's perfect. All right. And leaving threads long, repeat, repeat, repeat. So we're gonna pull up the ends. I know it's black, you probably can't see it really well. I didn't think about that, sorry. But I like the black and the gold together with the look of the wallet, so it needed to be black. But I'm doing the same thing I've been doing, is just tying knots, pulling the thread through, tying knots, and trimming and singeing. So there's the other one. Pulling that through. If you guys haven't figured, if everybody hasn't figured out already, I am not perfect. I am not the pro. My product looks good when it's done, but you know, sometimes I just make things difficult, and sometimes it's a learning curve, learning new things. All right, so I am gonna go ahead, grab my lighter, and just melt those ends down, making sure they're flat. All right, so now I am going to test this card slot. So I'm gonna kind of finger crease that. I'm gonna take that credit card again, and she gives great advice about halfway between the two card slots. And then I'm gonna remove that tape. I'm gonna fold this over, keeping it straight. I do want this to stay in a straight line. And sticking it down, popping the card out. Boop, boop, there it goes, boop. All right, so I wanna make sure that this stays straight, so the edges as even as I can get them. And I'm gonna put that down, stick it down. And now I am going to, first we'll test it to make sure that that worked. All right, what did I do? Did I not? Okay. Card slot in. Card slot in. What did I do? Did I sew the wrong one already? Oh. There we go. Took the tape off the wrong one. That's what the problem was. All right. So this is why we test. This is always why we check. All right. So this one has tape on it that's sticky, so I'm gonna have to watch out for that, but it'll be fine. And I'm going to take the tape off the right one. See, We all make mistakes. It's not about not making mistakes. It's about learning through them. All right, and my card seems to be about in the right position. So I am going to push that down, get my card out of there. No, I'll just take the card out and fold it back down. I'm gonna come back here. This is part of the problem, is I made my waterproof canvas piece backing a little bit long. So I'm just gonna cut some of that off. Fiddly. All right, that's better. Okay, so now we have our card slot. I'm gonna put it in the slot to test it where I want it. That looks good. So then I can fold it over and stick it down and not have to fight to get that card out. And it's going to stick to both pieces of tape, but that's okay. It comes off easy. And keeping it straight. All right, now we got it. We got it finally. Take our card out, and then I am going to sew across the bottom of this card. So the next one up. Sew across the bottom of that. Hopefully I'm not confusing you. I want to do this justice for MaryBeth. All right. See, it's always good to double check things before you just plow ahead. All right, putting my needle in that hole, and I am just gonna sew straight across to that other, sew across to the other side. Stopping along that line I put in the chalk and keeping my tails long. All right, I got it now. So that's down. I'm gonna go ahead and pull my tails through, tie them off. Listen to the music while I'm doing that. I have a clock that plays, actually I have 2 clocks in here that plays music on the hour. So, sorry, but not sorry, because I enjoy it. If it annoys you, mute me. All right, I got one more here to tie off. Oops, that didn't want to pull through right. All right, I'm not using name brand or the thread I'm using I don't remember. It might have been from Tandy. I think it's a little thinner. Works well, but sometimes I've noticed it can snag. All right, one more. I probably should shut up while I'm doing this so you guys can just concentrate instead of having to listen to me yap on. All right. And you know the process by now. Singe the ends. Singe the ends. All right, so there we have, we always test. There we have this card slot, this one. Now we're working to build this one. So I've already got tape on there that's sticky. That's the problem, that's part of the, All right, so we're gonna put our card in there and stop about where we want it to stop. Unclip this and pull that up. Secure it to that tape, trying to keep it square and even. Perfect. All right, so now I'm gonna sew underneath the next one. And from this point, I'm just gonna fast forward so you can watch as I do them. Okay, so that was our last card slot. We've stitched underneath every one of the card slots. We've attached this to the top of the edge, and we just want to trim that, but we want to trim it fairly close to the seam allowance, but not too close. So I'm just gonna slip my scissors in there and trim that. Now, maybe a little bit more off over here. It's probably fine, but I feel like it's just a little too close. So I'm just gonna trim a little bit more of that off there. All right, that's good. That looks good. Okay. All right, so we have our card slots built. Now we are going to take our double-sided tape and we're going to kind of put it down the center, kind of eyeball where the center is, and all the way around the edge. And then we're going to fold it in half. You can glue this, I know, with leather. When I'm using leather, I do glue it. I have leather glue I use, or contact cement you can use. But because this is cork, and because I don't want to wait for glue to dry, I am just going to use tape. And tape it down. Just don't want it hanging over the edge. And then I am going to retrieve my little weeding pen that fell on the floor and take that tape off. All four edges. If you feel like you need to, you can tape the card slots down. This is super thin, this ripstop, so I am not going to. I have done that when I've used like a water resistant canvas, it needed just a little bit extra. So now we are going to fold this in half and we're going to match those edges. Kind of start with the corners. The closer you get this matched, the nicer it looks. All right, trying to do this on the camera. So making sure my little card slots stay in. I'll come over here and match this corner. And I can kind of feel that it's even. All right, that looks good. So I'm just going to kind of from the edge out, still making sure that these edges are matched evenly. And then I'm just gonna push down. That secures it. So there is our card slot with the ID window. And all of these work great. There and there. All right. So now we are going to top stitch across this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I am going to go ahead and back stitch because I really don't want to mess with pulling them through. All right, trim ends, singe them if needed, and all right, and there you have it. All right, so we have our card slot pieces. We have our card slot pocket piece that they go on. We have a bottom edge card slot and 2 of the upper card slots. So I am going to start with one of the upper ends, and I'm going to put a piece of tape along this line. There are marking lines in the pattern. As I said, I did cut this one out on the laser, and I know when MaryBeth cuts them out, so those kits I was talking about, there are faint lines you can follow that are the same size as the slip pocket, the card slot pockets. Not slip pocket, that's a different type of thing, sorry. All right, so double-sided tape on and backing off. There are measurements in the pattern as well for where these go. So you can draw lines and do it that way. I do have tape on the ends, but I'm gonna do that after. So I'm gonna take this piece and I'm gonna line it up with those lines. Oops. There we go. And press it down. And then I do have the double-sided tape on the end, so I'm just going to secure that down on the end as well. You don't have to do that step. You can glue or tape them down later. All right. And then I'm going to sew at 1/8 of an inch just across the bottom of the card slot. And I am going to back stitch because this is hidden. You won't see it. All right, perfect. I'll trim those ends. All right. So we're going to do the same with the next pocket. It's the one that's the same style. I'm going to put a piece of double-sided tape along the bottom and follow that line marking. Stick it down and top stitch it. I will secure the edges because I do have that tape on there. But as I said before, you can wait. All right. There we go. And lining them up with that little mark that's already there. Perfect. And taking my ends off because they're there. It does keep it from shifting, but it isn't necessary. But I'm just making sure the edges of those card slots come right even with the edge of the wallet piece. They just fit so perfectly together. I'm telling you, the kit, if she has the kit, they're not expensive, and the quality of her stuff and the laser engraving she does is phenomenal. So I would recommend. I'm gonna clip those too, I think. Well, they seem to be okay. All right, so next I'm gonna, sorry, getting ahead of myself, gonna top stitch along that bottom edge to secure that in place. Back stitching is fine again because you are not gonna see it. And I back stitched a lot, but that's okay. All right, perfect. All right, so we have our 2 card slots, and then we're going to take our bottom piece. So the bottom piece has the edges that match, and I am going to add a little bit more tape here than what I have, just because I can. Because we are not going to stitch this quite yet. We're going to stitch the centers. All right, and I don't want this hanging over the edge, so I'm going to trim that off. All right, so I'm going to take all this tape off and I'm going to put it on there and line it up. Same thing, matching all the edges, keeping them super even. That's the biggest with a raw edge project like this. You want to make sure your edges are completely even. There we go. I say half of the sewing's done at the sewing machine with this raw edge project. A lot of raw edge projects, half of the sewing is done with the double-sided tape instead of pressing. Move that out of the way or I will have it stuck to everything. I know by experience. All right, so I'm kind of matching these corners and sides first. So I want them right even. Sometimes it's easier to feel it than it is to see it. Same with this side. I'm going to match those edges even. Then I'm going to match the bottoms even. Move this side up just a tiny bit. All right, perfect. So there's our card slots so far. Now I am going to, down where the V is, where the card slot V, I'm just going to start at the top and back stitch and stitch straight down those lines. If you want to draw a line, you can. I think I can wing it. but you do want to make sure you're going straight. So make sure your foot is pointing at the center of that V, and you should be okay. And watch your layers that they don't lift as you're stitching. Perfect. All the way down to the bottom and back stitch. All right. There we go. Trimming threads. Got a piece of tape. There we go. All right. And on the front, I am going to singe those threads down here on the front. You can't really see them because they're black, but I just feel better. All right, so there we have our card slots. We can take our card, make sure they fit. Looks like they're gonna fit just fine, because we have a 1/8 of an inch over here, so we have plenty of room. Perfect. All right. So the next thing we're gonna do is I'm going to put tape down the center and around the other sides, and I'm gonna fold it in half and tape it down. Keep making sure that that tape does not hang over the edge. You don't want it hanging over the edge, because you'll see it. It'll get in your way. This wallet is really cute, edge coated or left raw. If you like to edge coat, it gives it that little bit of extra, whatever, I guess extra class or extra oomph, but it isn't needed. And with the cork, for me, I think the raw edge is probably the best option without doing anything. However, this is laser cut, so my edges look good, and if you get a kit from MaryBeth, it would be the same. I really encourage that. I'm not trying to sell for her. I'm not getting paid for it, but I just know how good her products are. So, all right. All right. Oh, and I guess I didn't need to go all the way around, but we got extra tape now. And then kind of on the center, so that when it folds, wrong way, center this way. So when it folds, it has that as well. All right, well, we got extra tape on this, so we're just gonna roll with it because I was just taping and talking. But you really only need it on half. But it doesn't hurt. When you glue stuff together with the contact cement or leather glue, typically you glue both sides, let it dry, and then you can put it together. So maybe that's what I was thinking. I think it was just, I was more yapping along and not paying as much attention to what I was doing, but it's okay. This, by any means, is not the worst mistake I've ever made. It's not going to affect the wallet at all. All right, come on. The tape today just isn't liking me all the time. Sometimes just rubbing it isn't that you're rubbing it in, it's that you're getting it warm. And when it's warm, it sticks better. And that paper releases better. All right, so I'm once again going to fold this in half. I'm gonna start with the corners and match those corners up as best I can, kind of feeling it. And then kind of do the other corner. Hopefully you can see this and I'm not off camera. There we go, feels good. And then kind of making sure as we go along, this stays even. Perfect. All right. Once I get that edge done, I'm going to work up the sides, making sure they stay even. And then I will fold it and push along the top. Get the rest of that stuck down. All right, there you have that. And I am going to once again top stitch across the top at an 1/8 of an inch top stitch seam allowance. And I am going to go ahead and back stitch at the top, beginning and end. I could pull it through the back, but I'm not gonna. That back stitch is right on the black, so you don't really see it a whole lot anyway. All right, so clipping threads, and gonna zap that with a little bit of heat just to make it lay flat. All right, so there are our card slot wallets, or our card slot piece. All right, so now we're gonna assemble the whole thing. So grab the rest of your pieces and meet me back here. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our exterior, and down here where the snap placement is, I am going to put my female end snap, and I am using rivet snaps. It's what she really recommends, but you can use any snaps. And I'm gonna add on the inside a small piece of some fusible fleece. It's actually sticky fleece, just to give that snap a little bit of extra body. And then I'm gonna go ahead and rivet that in. Be right back. Okay, so back, and I do have the female end of my snap on the bottom exterior. I did put that little bit of fusible fleece on the back, and using the rivet snaps are nice because they're a smooth edge, so it's not gonna wear your material. You can use a really thin snap if you need to. If you don't have the rivet, just make sure you can cover that up with tape or some sort of something. Tape is great, or the fusible fleece on top of it so it doesn't rub on the other side or the interior of the wallet. I'll get it out eventually. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for a moment, and I am going to work on just kind of securing this down so that I can do the final assembly. We are almost there. So I'm going to take my card slots, and there is a line on the pattern piece. There's also one for the laser. So I am just going to take a piece of tape and put that on the back of my, sorry, the clocks. Gotta love me. I like my clocks and my music. It'll entertain you while I'm putting tape on the back of my card slot piece. And again, you don't want it hanging over the edge, so I'm just gonna trim that little piece off. And it's stuck to me. All right, there we are. Okay, so I am gonna find my little, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a line across where the placement of this is. So I am gonna take, well, there we go. All right, I'm gonna take the tape off the back of, or the backing off my tape. I'll get it right. Man, you guys are patient. If you've stuck with me for this long, you're patient, because sometimes the words don't come out the way that they need to. And that whole piece of tape came up with the tape, not just the paper. So we're going to put it back on. Making sure it doesn't go past that edge. Get it warm so it'll peel off for us. It's not wanting to peel off. Sometimes the cork, I honestly don't remember where I got this cork. It could have been Joann's, it could have been ordered it offline somewhere. I don't know. But it's not wanting, the tape is not wanting to stick to the cork. And sometimes you just gotta work with it. Give it some love. Rub it a little bit. Sometimes that doesn't even help. Get it warm. There we go. Just had to get warm. It might be a little chilly in here. And then I do have that placement line. I'm going to start with lining up my edges and following that placement line. I think I am going to add just a little bit of tape down here on the sides to hold the sides down. Probably should have done that first, but that's okay. Sometimes it's easier to do things the hard way, or not. All right, tape on both sides, not on the top, because that's going to be like a money holder place. The side. Oh. And I'll take the little piece of fabric off. There we go. All right, unstick it to me because tape loves me. Telling you, tape and glue, I'm like a 12-year-old with, or a 2-year-old with. All right, now hopefully we'll get the tape off of this end. Gotta warm it up, give it some love. This end, try this end. Nope, it just doesn't like to stick to this cork. There we go. Kind of got it saved. Maybe. It's splitting, it just isn't sticking. All right, there we go. And the other end. I said at the beginning there's a lot of double-sided tape on this, so. All right, see if we can get that to stick down. Sometimes it's just easier to separate it and hold it down. There we go. All right, so I am going to match my sides and my line kind of at the same time. The good news is it doesn't stick real well, so I have a little bit of flexibility with this. All right, so this edge looks good. Kind of roll it down, match the line. Oh, it needs to come down more. I can see the line better from this side. There we go. Now I can see what I'm doing. Sliding it that way just a little bit so its edge is even. And we want the top and the bottom edge even, not just the top or the bottom. All right, there we go. Got it. Perfect. Now I am going to top stitch down this little side, across the bottom, and up the little side. I'm not doing the sides yet because I'm going to catch that when I do the whole thing. Finally, the tape. All right. Top stitching, holding threads, back stitch. I'm going to back stitch because it's black on black and it's fine. But I am going to hand crank through the corners. There we go. Across the bottom. Making sure it doesn't move on me. Hand cranking on the corners again, making sure that needle's coming up so I get a straight corner instead of a zigzag one. And then to the end and back stitch. All right. This wallet's looking really cute. I really like the black and the gold. All right, and once again, I'm going to singe those ends. Making sure I'm just getting the threads and I'm not burning anything. All right, so there we have it. And this is a bill slot, or it will be. All right, so now we're gonna secure this down with some tape. And then we are going to assemble the whole thing, do some top stitching. More tape, but we're good. And we're gonna tape the whole thing together too. So like I said, it is a very, you use a lot of tape, but I'll tell you what, it keeps it together and it just finishes it so nicely. I'm thankful for the tape because things don't move around and it keeps that piece secure while you're trying to sew it. All right, I think I need another cup of coffee. All right, one more side. Keeping that tape from going over the edge. Pulling it off. All right, so once again, we get to fiddle with getting the tape off, but that's okay. See if we can do this now. Ah, pulled right off. It was being nice. Whoops. But it wants to stick to me, which I don't want it to do that. All right, and one more. Doesn't look like that's down very well, but yeah. Don't put your fingers in it once you start it, or once you get it on there. It's probably not the best option. All right, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Got 2 out of 3 to stick well. This one we're gonna just fiddle with a little, get it stuck down. There we go. All right. And as usual, we are going to place this matching the edges. I'm going to start with the corners and the edge, the bottom edge. And sometimes it is helpful to pick that up and feel it. I can feel when it's even. Kind of squeeze it down. Perfect. Feels pretty dang good. All right. There we have it. So there's the inside of our wallet. It's going to be super cute. Okay. Now we are going to put tape all around the edges. I know, more tape, but this is like a felted, the black has like almost a felted backing on it, so I think it'll stick down better. Won't be so fussy. Up the sides. Across the top. Down the other side. One more side. Perfect. All right, and then that zipper pocket, I am going to put a piece of tape there. So that zipper pocket, I'm going to do it just above where my stitching line is here. Probably about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch above that stitching line where I stitched that front piece. All right, now I'm going to start with the top. I'm going to peel that tape off, and I'm going to lay the top exterior and the interior right sides together. Get the tape up first. Maybe it's not going to stick. Oh, it's definitely serves its purpose. Double-sided tape is amazing, but sometimes it can be finicky. There we go. I am going to start these two sides. Just get them started. There we go. There we go. All right, so taking the top corner, and I'm going to, let's see, going to lay this wrong sides together, matching those edges and keeping them even. And you can fiddle with it a little bit. I didn't quite get that even there. There we go. There we go. I like that better. There we go. All right, now we're cooking. Keeping those edges nice and even. And I'm just gonna keep going with that tape. I'm gonna go ahead and take the paper off that center piece. You can glue it. You can also stitch it if you want. We may. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and take off the rest of all the double-sided tape. And then continue to lay these edges even all the way down. Making sure they look right and feel right. All right, there we go. Feels pretty good. Might need to move over a tiny bit. All right, perfect. And I'm gonna do the same with this side before I do the bottom. So I am going to Make sure these sides line up, all these card slots with it. And make sure the corners match, the edges match. All right, looks pretty stinking good to me. Maybe a little. This is really important to get these edges lined up because it really does affect the finished look of the wallet. If you're edge coating it, which we might later, the more even you get the edges, the easier the edge coat process is. If the edges are all wonky and uneven, it just takes a lot more work to make it look nice once it is edge, or to get it to edge coat nicely. All right, I like that. Perfect. I am going to put my zipper in the center so it doesn't prevent, I can keep this pretty flat. And I am going to start top stitching. I'm going to do it from the opposite end. And I'm going to start on this side and work down. You do want to watch those card slots. You don't want them folding or moving as you sew. And if you start, this is all hints from MaryBeth, if you start by those card slots, you can actually pull the threads and you wouldn't notice. However, I am probably just going to backstitch because with this black on the black, you really don't see it. So just gonna take my time, backstitch one stitch, and then go around. I am gonna stop and crank those corners just to make sure I get a nice placement of my stitches. So when I get pretty close to the corner, I'll crank it a couple of times because I want it in the right spot. And then, perfect. Crank it around the rest of the corner. Probably another half a stitch there. Pulling it almost all the way back up. Otherwise I get those angled corners where it skips that stitch. All the way across the bottom. Making sure I keep that seam allowance. A couple more stitches to the corner. Needle almost all the way up and crank it a couple more. One more. And then making sure that needle's on its way up. Then straight up the side. Watching those card slots still. Keep in mind you are changing thickness as you go over through those card slots. So you may have to use a hump jumper or hand crank it if your machine kind of struggles. Just make sure you are aware. Almost done. Really didn't take that long to make. My struggles with tying and the tape. You get it real here, people. This is reality. There's times I make mistakes. There's times I struggle with tape, just like the next person. But I just want this to be real. I want, you know, we all have struggles sometimes. We all have days when we sew the wrong piece on, or we sew it backwards, or we forget to put something in. And that's just part of sewing. It's part of the learning experience. All right, all the way around. And guess what? We are done, with the exception of the other half of our snap. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and singe those corners, or the threads. I don't like little threads hanging out. I feel like that kind of elevates it when you get those threads all. Oh, this is so pretty. I really like this. All right, my last step is I'm going to put the male end of the snap, and look at her placement is perfect. Right on. Put the male end of the snap on, and I will be done with this wallet. It's definitely pretty. I really am surprised at how much I like the, it shouldn't be, but I'm surprised at how much I like that gold. All right. Just riveting down that snap. By the way, if I got mine from Cam Snaps. Other people sell them. The snaps, the dies, all those things. But it's a good investment. Having these rivet-on snaps really makes life a lot easier. All right, so there we have it. Let's see. There you are. There we have it. All right, so super fun sew. Really not complicated, all straight stitch. A lot of double-sided tape, but look at the end product. You've got your bill pockets, receipts, whatever. You've got a ton of card slots, plus you've got your ID window, and you also have that little zipper for coins as well. Really put together well, easy to sew. She walks you through the pattern, through the process. This is mine. This has been my go-to for years. This cow fabric is actually from MaryBeth Made It. Of course, it's upside down that way, but anyway, it has stood the test of time with the zipper in the back. Go get the pattern. If you have a friend that could use a wallet, or you just want to give somebody something extra special and handmade, go get the pattern. It'll take you little time to cut out. It's all straight edge cutting out, no curves to have to deal with. It's all very straightforward. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Have a Merry Christmas, and we will see you tomorrow.